Pericles, as we've mentioned before, becomes a leader in Athens, and he does a lot of good things for the city-state. But what he does do during this time is he starts to use the coffers, because during the Second Persian War, because even though the Battle of Thermopylae held back the Persians for 3 days, they eventually did make it to Athens and destroyed and burned the city. So the Athens is destroyed to the ground. So Pericles uses money from the Delian League to help beautify Athens. And of course, this irritates the Spartans because that's supposed to be used for war in case anybody else invades. And so Sparta and its allies declares war on Athens and its allies, and we have the Peloponnesian War, where the Spartans basically surround and lay siege to Athens. And after a series of years, Pericles and many other Athenians die because they can't get out and get supplies, and eventually it brings down the end of Athens. Now, what it also does is it causes a lot of devastation to the city-states in Athens, and they can't unify and protect themselves. So what happens next is, of course, if you cannot unify and protect yourself, you get conquered. And Macedonia, which is a country north of Greece, moves down under the leadership of Philip II, and he attacks Greece. Now, Macedonia and Greece both fight using a phalanx. A phalanx is when you have lines of soldiers and they interlock their shields. And the first row basically interlocks their shields as a preventative wall. And a group behind you, at least in ancient Greece, they used to use spears, which they called a dory, and to stab over the top. The phalanx was a great fighting weapon, a tool used by the ancient Greeks to protect themselves. Philip changes this tactic a little bit, and he uses 18-foot pikes instead of a 6-foot spear. And so his phalanx, he has lines of 3 people, three lines of soldiers back to back, and they've got 3 18-foot pikes marching towards you, and it's just, you can't get close enough with the 6-foot spear to stab them. And so as a result, Philip and the Macedonian army conquers Greece. Philip, being the king, his son is Alexander the Great, and Alexander is tutored by Aristotle. He, of course, Philip goes out and finds the best teacher at the time. Aristotle happens to be that person, and he teaches his son to think. One of the great legends of Alexander is the Gordian knot, when he's attacking Persia, because, and there's a mystery behind there. Some people believe that Alexander may have actually been conspired to take the throne. He takes the throne from his father at 20 years old, when his dad is assassinated by somebody who people believe Alexander may have had some influence on, some historians. So as he's attacking Persia, because he wants to conquer the world, he's got great aspirations, he comes across the city-state of Gordia. And in there, supposedly, there's a legend that there's this knot in an oxen cart that was brought there, and whoever can untie the Gordian knot will take over the world. And so Alexander is really big in myths and understanding of that kind of stuff. And so he looks at this knot and he says, this is how Alexander unties the knot. And he takes his sword out and cuts the knot to where he can reveal its ends, and then he unties it. And so therefore, he becomes the conqueror of the known world at that time. So that's one of those great legends of Alexander the Great. But he does conquer Persia, and he takes all of that territory that we saw on that previous map, all that purple territory of Persia, and brings it all under his control. Now, he does die when he's 32, so literally after he's done conquering everything, he dies. And so the various kingdom that he created gets divided up into 3 or 4 separate kingdoms, ruled by different generals. And also when he conquered city-states, he renamed them Alexandria. The one that lasts is, of course, Alexandria, Egypt, which, if you were to look at the map, would be on the coastal city of Egypt right here on the Mediterranean. And that becomes a center of learning for Hellenistic culture. And Hellenistic culture is that blending of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian cultures into one. And that becomes this Hellenistic culture that is the epitome of Alexander and the Greek Empire, and it has a lasting impact. One of the reasons why also we know so much about Alexander is because of the Roman historians. They favored war, and so they valued the stories like Alexander the Great.